So, Oldham were relegated out of the Football League on Saturday for the first time in their 115-year history. They were also the first team to have played in the Premier League to drop out of the Football League altogether. Here's a tweet from journalist Will McGee. Another community institution abandoned to mismanagement and neglect. Bad ownership is hollowing out English football one club at a time. Here's another from the Daily Mail's Mike Keegan, who is a big Oldham fan. The darkest day in my club's history. I think of my granddad who used to lift my auntie over the turnstiles to get in for free. I think of my dad who took my unwitting mum for a weekend in Southport only to slope off and watch them. Most of all, I think of two words, Abdallah out, and that's referring to the owner. You were at Oldham actually, weren't you, as a kid, Mikey? You do have a connection to the club before you went to City. Yeah,
I was there from 11 till 14 and I always follow their results. I've been to a couple of games. Remember training at Boundary Park a couple of times. To see this news is shocking, really, because these are big clubs. I remember when, I don't remember, but Frank Bunn was my coach at Man City, and he said when they
we were talking last night, weren't we? I mean, and honestly, I could name the majority of that Oldham team from the late 80s, early 90s under Joe Royle. They were some team, that Oldham team, and you know, for those of us of a certain age around that time, late 80s, early 90s, they were a seriously good football team.
There really was, but this is why, you know, Gary Neville's been banging on about this independent regulator, because these owners think they can just come into the clubs, rip the heart out of them, and then the fans are just left wanting. It's absolutely shocking. And this is not just me because I've got affiliation with Oldham. It's just these are historic clubs, you know, with great history. And the owner just thinks he can use it as some sort of toy, you know, to get his name out there or whatever they want to do. It's not good for English football, and it really does need sorting.
I'm going to bring Philip Buckingham from the Athletic in. He was at Boundary Park on Saturday. Evening, Philip.
Evening, all.
Evening. Look, sides get relegated from the Football League. It happens. That's the nature of the competition. You know, Scunthorpe had been in the Championship, and Scunthorpe are the side that are going with Oldham. But for Oldham fans and the ones who very much protested on Saturday, this isn't just because they've been playing bad football. I mean, this has been the decline of a club for 20 years.
Absolutely, it has, and a decline that's been hastened in the last probably 4.5 since the arrival of Abdallah Lemsingham. He arrived at the club when it was sort of mid to lower table in league club in League One, relegated within his first 6 months, and then gradually they've just sloped down the divisions. Fought relegation to National League last year successfully, but it was too big an ask this year. It's a poor squad of players. There's been a relentless churn of both players and managers in the last 4 years, and eventually it's caught up with them. You only had to speak to supporters at the game on Saturday, and this is a train they saw coming down the tracks for a number of years. And I got the impression that even if some miracle happened on Saturday and they'd have ended up getting out of this trouble, they fear that it would just be the same battle again next year, I think. And there's a general consensus there that until the ownership changes, that club will remain in deep trouble.
The owner installed his brother as a sporting director. They've had 11 managers in 4 years. They dropped into League Two in the summer of 2018. I mean, you know, and some of those managers left the club. Paul Scholes was one, wasn't he? He quit over alleged interference in team selection from ownership and the hierarchy. That's one of the reasons why it comes back to the ownership.
Yeah, it's been chronic mismanagement for a number of years there. They go through 2 or 3 managers a season, and when those managers leave, they generally have something to say about the limitations that they had to work under. Keith Cole was saying something at the weekend along those lines, and I'm sure when John Sheridan eventually leaves the club, he'll have plenty to say as well. The sad thing is that John Sheridan, club hero, absolute legend of the club, he was there in the thick of the supporters when they invaded the pitch, trying to plead with them to get off. it felt like he was going to turn it around for a spell of this year. And it was almost like a truce was called on his behalf to back the team. And even on Saturday, for long periods of the game, there was genuine support. But the mood sort of quickly darkened once it became clear that both Barrow and Stevenage were winning, and sort of 10 minutes to go on they came, and any unity that John Sheridan might have instilled sort of broke up and fell into 1,000 pieces.
Philip, what was the owner's motive then when he brought the club, and where is the situation at now? I mean, does he want to sell? Is there a figure on if he does want to sell? Because the club doesn't own the ground, does it?
No, it doesn't.
The club doesn't own the ground or the stadium, which is a big issue, isn't it? So what is there to sell?
And don't laugh all at once, but his ambitions was to get the club into the Championship, and here we are in National League. He's released a statement today saying it remains his commitment to sell the club, that there will be backing on the current budget in National League. That will be dwarfed by a lot of clubs in National League, the way that spending's gone at that level, and it won't be easy for them to get back. Suggestion is he wants £6 million for a club that doesn't own its ground, and if he still wants that figure in National League, I suspect he's going to be waiting for a long time. It just simply isn't worth that. And
what is it worth? What is the club worth?
Not £6 million, that's for sure.
Can you put a figure on it? Is it worth £1?
I suspect. Well, he bought it for £1. Don't get me wrong, he's lost an awful lot of money since then, but I think at some point he's going to have to swallow his pride if he's going to cut his losses and walk away from that club.
Let me read a quote from Matt Dean, the Oldham Athletic Supporters Foundation. The honourable thing would be for them to turn around and say, do you know what, we're not going to get the money we want for the club, we've invested badly. If you buy a car and you trash it, you don't get the value for what you paid for it when selling. So I think they need to accept that and say, this is your club, you want to take responsibility for it, we don't anymore, so there you go, get on with it, we'll deal with it because it's our club. I mean, interestingly, they had 5,000 there, didn't they, Philip, on Saturday? Now, that Oldham Athletic Supporters Foundation has also run a poll that says only 7 or just shy of 8% of fans would buy a season ticket if the ownership remained as it currently does. So for any new owner, if they can get hold of it, I mean, those season tickets will rocket because they've got rid of this guy.
Oh, there's certainly some easy wins. That's the positive. Yeah, there's easy wins for anyone that comes into that club, because whoever they are, they won't be Abdullah Lenzing, and people will come back and support them. There's supporters boycotting already. Supporters I spoke to on Saturday, season ticket holders, said that if Lemsingen is still the owner next season, they will not be there. And I think that will be indicative of the fan base, really. And just in National League, you won't get as many away supporters come in, and everything about that club in terms of finances will shrink next year. And without someone willing to back it, it's going to be in big trouble, I think.
Just a final one, because I mean, on Saturday, when it eventually, or before it restarted, after everybody had been told it was abandoned, and media told not to publicise the game was about to restart, all of that kind of stuff. But advertising hoardings were being used to board up windows of the bar that season ticket holders were in, so they couldn't watch the last few minutes of their club in the Football League. Is that right?
That's correct, yeah. So they managed to clear the ground and the pitch, and the last few stragglers that were on the pitch were removed when they turned the sprinklers on. That's how it was almost like a tragic comedy, really. But there was on the opposite side of the ground to where we were there's a fans bar inside there, not owned by the club, and they had no jurisdiction over it, by what I can gather. And there was a corridor with a glass entrance, a glass fire exit overlooking the pitch, and I think a few supporters had cottoned on to the fact that the game was restarting. They've moved over to watch. And stewards were told to repurpose a few advertising boards, carry them up the steps, and block a few fire exits, and the supporters watching from there, which sort of summed up how sort of tragic a club it's become, really. And for the duration of those 11 minutes that they had to play, you had a couple of stewards leaning on advertising boards to keep them upright and stopping the view to the pitch, which was bizarre, quite frankly. The most surreal afternoon
Philip?
I've had at a football ground.
Yeah. But of course, we keep getting told football's nothing without fans, until they want to treat fans appallingly. Thank you, Philip. Philip
No
Buckingham
problem, take care.
from the Athletic, who was at Boundary Park. The other thing, Rory, with Oldham, and this just isn't on the current ownership, but this shows what Oldham fans have been through. Since they were relegated from the Premier League in 93-94, they've not been promoted once. And they haven't even reached a playoff final in that time. They've reached the playoff semis twice, which is in 2003 and 2007. And the last time they finished top 10 of any league is 2010. So they haven't had a single high since they were relegated. Well, maybe reaching a playoff semi-final, but they haven't had a single high, really, since they were relegated in 93-94.
No, it's been a fairly miserable sort of 20, 30 years for Oldham. Although I would say that you kind of have to put it in context, don't you? There is your team finishing 14th in League One and it being a bit of a forgettable season, and you lose more games than you win, and it's a bit disappointing. And there is your team being, as Philip said, chronically mismanaged and facing the oblivion of relegation to the National League. And yeah, there's footballing disappointments, but this feels yet again like another level of chaos, really. And you know, we saw it with Bury. You've seen it with, Stockport are now coming back, but they went down. It just seems to happen.
Wrexham were another.
Once every couple of years. You don't go all the way back to sort of, was it 97 when Chester, the American took over at Chester and decided to manage it himself. And you know, the government announced the findings of the fan-led review last night. So bizarrely late. I don't know why they released it at midnight, but that has kind of been kicked into the long grass a little bit since the furore over the Super League last year. But I do think we are reaching a point where hopefully there is a bit of a kind of groundswell of support for the idea that maybe the model as it stands doesn't work. And it's brilliant having, you know, Man City and Liverpool are two of the best teams this country's ever seen. It's a compelling title race. There's great players at, you know, most Premier League teams now have got at least one or two players who really get you off your seat. But the game as a whole is not healthy, and something has to change.